I was going through the process of what I was saying, transitioning, because it's been built into my vocabulary. I went to my coach and I said, hey, as I'm transitioning out of this role and trying to go more into all of the professional stuff that I'm doing, he just stopped me right there. And he said, you're not transitioning, you're expanding.
Welcome to Veteran CEO Magazine, where veterans lead the way. I'm Jay Hernandez, and today my guest is Dave Burlin. David is a Marine Corps veteran, program manager for entrepreneurship at Vets in Tech, the state coordinator for Nevada for the Global Entrepreneurship Week, and for the last 20 years post-service has been building various roles, building the ecosystem that supports networks for veterans across the United States. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today.
I love it. Thanks for having me, man.
In every single episode of VCEO, something I try to do is talk about what that transition process was like. And I give a challenge to my guests is to try to do that in 6 words or fewer. So for you, that same question is, how would you describe the military transition process in 6 words or fewer?
Yeah, well, I'm simply trying to promote veteran expansion and transformation. So it's really funny. I'm really trying to take the word transition out of our vocabulary, because I feel like that word has kind of given, I don't want to say permission, but it has kind of created a conversation that generally leads to a lot of the harder, more negative challenges that we all face post-service. And sometimes it's just a matter of changing those words that might change the mindset. And it may not happen for everybody. If it only happens for a few, then those few will continue to lead the way.
So we see those words that we choose to describe how we go through our life is such a big part for that. So expansion and transformation, I'm assuming you've got quite the personal story to this. So let's start with the word expansion on there. Like, why did you pick that word?
Well, I wish I could tell you I picked that word. And I think one of the most important things that I've ever done in my whole life is hire not just one coach, but I've hired a lot of coaches. And part of that being because I have been a coach for other people in a very professional setting. But my coach is a celebrity influencer coach. His name is David Meltzer, and he's actually the one who it was this aha moment probably about a year ago. And thanks so much for hitting some of the high notes on my bio. One that I left out is after my service in the Marine Corps, I was a drill instructor for at-risk youth for 7 years. And then I switched all of it up and I became a wedding DJ. And for 15 years, I've DJ'd more than 750 weddings all over the United States. Now, when I stepped back from that role last year, and I took a really heavy hit on my revenue stream, I was going through the process of what I was saying, transitioning, because it's been built into my vocabulary. I went to my coach and I said, hey, as I'm transitioning out of this role and trying to go more into all of the professional stuff that I'm doing, he just stopped me right there. And he said, you're not transitioning, you're expanding. And when he said that, I felt like it was the beginning of a real answer and a real solution to all veterans, wherever they're at in their expansion from service to civilian life, whether they've been out for 20 years, if they keep calling it a transition, that transition word, something about it gives the permission for them to go down a harder road. I believe there's 2 sides of expansion, right? There's post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic support, and then there's post-traumatic growth. And I think each one of those has a very different set of resources and a very different set of challenges. I'm simply trying to help people understand that in that expansion, if we go about it the right way, we can really make a positive impact, not just for ourselves, but for other veterans who are expanding every day.
So many veterans, when they're exposed to things that give them those long-lasting, we call them invisible scars sometimes. And hearing how you are describing this to not just think about it as stress, because yes, it is stressful, but then taking that and using that to help you do something else. I'm curious, can you expand a little bit more on this post-traumatic growth idea?
Yeah. So post-traumatic growth is simply that. And I couldn't say it without saying the post-traumatic stress and support, that conversation ends, and it ends very badly. Right. And I don't even have to say the word. I just say that it ends, and it ends very badly. And we all know what I'm talking about. Post-traumatic growth, on the other hand, is perpetual. I think there's three very important pillars when it comes to post-traumatic growth, and that's education, employment, and entrepreneurship. A lot of people are going to use their benefits to go to school, and that's great. That was not the path that I chose. Employment is definitely one that's there. There's so many organizations, and a lot of the people that you've interviewed work for some incredible organizations that have some type of a veteran inclusion program or a military partnership hiring program or something to that effect. I think it's always funny because in a lot of the corporate trainings or keynotes that I've done, how many people here hire veterans, and all the hands go up. And I'm like, yeah, no one's going to say we do not hire veterans, but there's not always a real clear plan. So a lot of the programs that I've worked with in the past kind of help people create that veteran inclusion program. The final one is entrepreneurship, and that's my favorite because I've been completely obsessed with seeing ideas come to life. So I've worked for several organizations, and I can continue to support a lot of organizations that do have entrepreneurship as a focus, because for that, that's not for the faint of heart, right? The people that are in entrepreneurship, they're in it for the long haul. They're reading books in the morning, they're reading books at night, they're falling asleep to podcasts, they're hosting podcasts, they're doing all the things so they can continue to build their brand, build their business, build their network. And for that, I don't want to say that it can't be hard. It absolutely does get hard. But a lot of times I've seen that those people are a lot more successful in their expansion because they don't stop.
And expanding to, going back to the point where you're talking about transition versus expansion, it's giving yourself permission to try new things too. And that's difficult. You're not always going to have that skill set right away. But I think that's, and stop me if I'm leading you here a little bit, but I think that's why you chose that next word, transformation, is because
Exactly.
you take on those challenges to transform. So if you could go on to that part.
Yeah. So, and then in that simple mindset, because we're still in a positive, opportunistic mindset, transformation is the key, right? That's what turns the ignition. That's what sparks the idea. Now we have that ability because of just changing the words. This is where a lot of this came from. I'm really grateful to say that my very first public talk that I ever did was a TEDx talk. And it's funny because this was in 2014, which was a decade ago. I just celebrated 10 years that I did my first public talk. And back then it was pretty hard to find a TEDx stage. I'm not saying, there's a lot of people out there, but there's a lot of people that have curated their own talks and experiences because it is a very powerful way to get your message to the world. That was my first public talk. And I didn't even really know what that conversation was going to be. And even when I thought that I did, I actually rewrote that speech the morning of. That's a longer story, but I will say this, because the conversation around veteran transition has changed. It's almost like we've hit a wall with it. It was that little aha where my coach suggested, what if I'm not in a transition? What if I'm in an expansion? As soon as I felt that, I felt the shift. I was like, if 1,000 veterans heard that same thing, there's always going to be 10% of people that don't hear it at all. There's going to be 10% of people that just immediately accept it and run with it. And then you have the middle to find their way. This is my hope is that this becomes the foundation of TED Talk number 2. But I'll be really honest, if I could create my own TED Talk for specifically the veteran community, it would be a vet talk, a veteran expansion and transformation talk. And that's what we would do is we would pick a side. Are we talking about post-traumatic support? Are we talking about post-traumatic growth? You got 8 minutes, 8 slides, fight for it, go. And the whole reason for me to take on this subject and to have those answers is because this is the hardest pill for most people to swallow. Not every veteran is homeless. Not every veteran is suicidal. Not every veteran needs a job. And the hardest part that just doesn't compute, not every veteran has been to combat. And that's a really hard thing for a lot of people to understand, including veterans. That when there's all these different programs that they get a free burger on a holiday or something like that, that's a great initiative, but sometimes it doesn't really do anything beyond give somebody something for free. And that can continue to be hands out, help me. And I simply try to work a lot on the other side of post-traumatic growth.
When we talk about like that transition part to how there's a mindset too of I'm transitioning what I'm already doing, and I can't seem to find how that fits into the civilian world. How come that the skills I've learned, and that's something I hear a lot, is companies or veterans don't know how to translate their skills. But what we're talking about here is growing the skills, finding new skills, finding new things to do. In entrepreneurship, it's really kind of the exact definition of really trying something new. So you work a lot with veterans trying to get into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
What are the like most common challenges you see that pop right up, whether it's logistical or mental or just the most common things that you see?
Yeah, there's some things that don't make it easy for entrepreneurs in general. But I've worked with a couple of different organizations. Currently, I'm with Vets in Tech. We do have a whole program for entrepreneurship, and we work to catalyze startup incubators, accelerators, resources for veterans in the startup ecosystem to have the things that they need, legal protection, things like that. You know, the idea phase into income. How do we get there? There's a lot of challenges in entrepreneurship in general, but here's one that is kind of suits both veterans and entrepreneurs. I call it the Shark Tank economy, and this is great because Shark Tank really did ignite a lot of innovative ideas because people watch it, but because there's a whole channel now. Like every time I turn on my TV, I don't know why it's set to that channel. It's like MSNBC or whatever. It's like Shark Tank all day, every day. This is not good in my opinion, because what happens is you watch the TV show, you see the pitch, you see the story, whether they laugh or they cry, and you see one of the sharks, not always, but a lot of times the sharks will make a deal with them. And what it does, it creates this false sense of security that says, if I have a really good idea and I pitch a room full of people, one person will write me $1 million check and that is game over. That is not the reality. It's reality television. That is not the reality. Oftentimes those deals are chopped into 1 million pieces, and sometimes those deals don't even get taken to market. And even if they do, like $1 million is not very much money anymore. And it's certainly not something that changes the direction of somebody's life. It may spark an idea and make it a whole product to market, but you know, then you'll see people that are building things simply to try to get that $1 million. And another one of my big inspiring coaches and mentors is one of the co-founders of Priceline.com. He was like one of the top 3 people that was the co-founders on Priceline.com, Jeff Hoffman. He's the chairman of the board of Global Entrepreneurship Network. And his only advice to entrepreneurs is stop building businesses that solve problems that people don't have. Just because it's a good idea does not make it a good business.
So I've heard a couple of things. You might appreciate this, but it's the idea about an idea where people say, oh, that's a good idea when they're thinking about a good idea. The thing about a good idea is time tells if it's a good idea. At the time when something's had, it's just an idea.
Yeah.
And then the actions that you take later on will dictate whether or not it was in fact a good idea, or maybe It turned out to be a bad idea,
Yeah.
but that's okay. It's okay for things to not work out sometimes. It's something that we hear.
Yeah.
I failed. I failed a lot. You get used to failure. Sometimes those ideas that we were really passionate about, that were good ideas, turn out to be bad ideas, or that we think were good ideas, turn out to be bad ideas. So, how do you keep motivated, especially for young entrepreneurs? When we're talking about like income things and your stability, and when we're talking about, man, that I've got to try to get $1 million, and how far is that going to get me? And if that doesn't work out, I mean, that's a daunting idea
Yeah.
for a veteran.
Yeah. Well, I'll say a couple things because I'll try and save a lot of people time and energy and heartbreak when it comes to pitching their ideas. This is so simple, right? If you go and ask somebody for money, very often they will give you great advice. But if you go and ask people for great advice, as they unpack the problem with you, they will come to the conclusion that you just need a little money. And a lot of times they have it or they have access to it. But because they've become part of solving that problem, now they want to help you get the money. So if you go and ask for money, you get advice. You go and ask for advice, sometimes you'll get money. And that, it really works. It just does.
What a fascinating way to just kind of flip that, because when people feel like they're helping part of the solution, then that's that next thing that they're thinking of. A very interesting way to go on that. So there's, again, so much when it comes to entrepreneurship. There's no way we could unpack it all in just this episode. But surely wanted to see if I know you're with Vets and Techs, but other resources that you would recommend veterans look for.
There's some really great ones. I was actually part of a program called Bunker Labs for many years. Bunker Labs is great. They're in about 30 cities across the United States. They've changed their structure a little bit. They've actually partnered with a larger organization that's giving them a lot more support. And so Bunker Labs is a great one. There's a new one that's really fascinating to me. It's called Warrior Rising. And actually, they just, at the time of this recording, right, the big military influencer conference was over in Atlanta just last week, and they did a big business shower. They celebrated some veteran business owners that not only had completed the program, but they went through some different pitch opportunities and even secured some pretty decent size Happy Gilmore checks, right, and got some money to get them going. So I would say those would be generally my top three: Vets and Tech, the Veteran Startup Network. And then we also have Bunker Labs and Warrior Rising.
Any other general advice for our veteran service members who are still thinking about getting out, people who have been out for 20 years and are looking to expand and grow and transform? Closing thoughts for them.
Absolutely. We have the capacity to create businesses. The things that we learned in the military aren't always necessarily adaptable into all civilian jobs. Well, the best thing about entrepreneurship is it's not a job. We're solving problems. And that's all we did in the military, in any support of the battlefield, whether we were technical support, whether we were admin support, we were trying to solve problems before they became real problems. Now we're just taking that same level of ingenuity, and that is applicable to startups. You just need to find the right network, you need to find the right resources, and you need to have the right attitude to never give up, because I believe that every time that we are successful in our own expansion and transformation, it becomes a lighthouse for other veterans who may be struggling in their transition from service to civilian life.
Well, Dave, thank you so much again for coming on to Veteran CEO Magazine today, sharing your story, sharing this information about veteran expansion and transformation.
Thank you so much.
This is Veteran CEO Magazine, where veterans lead the way.